An idea comes to you because it is supposed to be manifested through you. If your ideas, everybody listening, wanted to be manifested by me, your idea would have come to me. You dream the dreams that you're supposed to realize. I dream the dreams that I'm supposed to realize. And ideas come to you at a time when the universe needs that idea.
Welcome to the Awaken Magazine podcast, where we feature inspiring leaders who are helping our world awaken to love. I'm your host, David Trotter, and today I want to share with you an exciting conversation with Debra Poneman. She is the founder of Yes to Success, and for over 40 years, she has been training individuals through her Yes to Success seminars to have the tools and techniques that they need to experience ultimate success in their lives. She's literally trained hundreds of thousands of people. You're going to love this conversation. It is so dynamic and full of nuggets of wisdom. We start off back in the 1970s, where she learned transcendental meditation and how that changed her life, and she began to teach that around the globe as well. She talks about how she stepped away from a very successful career as a personal development coach and consultant and trainer in order to care for her kids. And she talks about how developing relationship capital by cheering other people on, by being generous, actually leads to ultimate fulfillment, not only in your personal life, but in your career. I got to tell you, this interview is filled with so many nuggets of wisdom. You better have a pen and pad, a piece of paper, and ready to take notes. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the Awaken Magazine podcast. We release our episodes on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Check out all the episodes there. Click subscribe, rate and review the show. And most of all, share with a friend. Yeah, your friend is going to love this conversation as much as you do. All right, let's jump into this interview with Debra Poneman. Well, Debra, thank you so much for connecting with us today. It's so great to be with you.
And it's so great to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Hey, I want to start off like we start off almost every conversation, hearing your story of awakening to consciousness, mindfulness, spirituality. Did you kind of grow up with a home that had some sort of faith or spirituality in it, or was that new for you later in life?
Well, that is a great question. And I could start out on the day I was born, but I'll spare you that. But we didn't have a lot of spirituality in our home. I was raised Jewish, and we were very cultural Jews, and we love the holidays. But I just grew up with a whole lot of love and a whole lot of awareness about being kind and charitable. But I did come of age in the 1960s. So there was also activism and human rights to fight for. Mm-hmm. And I did march on Washington in the 60s, and I protested at the Democratic Convention to end the war in Vietnam in 1968. But just like so many young people back then, I was also part of a growing awareness that real change has to come from within. And I remember in 1970, I saw a poster of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi that said, "Expansion of happiness is the purpose of life." And I had been kind of like, an angry protester. I thought, that's interesting. Expansion of happiness is the purpose of life. So I learned to meditate. Why not? My life changed dramatically. And then,
how did you learn? Did you learn from a particular teacher, book?
Transcendental meditation. Okay. Actually, when I saw the picture of Maharishi on the poster, I'm like, oh, I'm going to learn from this dude, with the beard and the long hair. And I went. It was a nice lady from Germany. But I soon after that, because my life changed so dramatically, I became a TM teacher, and I started instructing thousands worldwide. Those people also probably expected Maharishi and got me. But I spent years going to courses with Maharishi, and that was during the time when the celebrities like the Beatles and the Beach Boys, I was in a small learning group with the Beach Boys, Donovan, Andy Kaufman, later David Lynch, may he rest in peace. They were all part of our meditation community. And this is something that people find surprising. I spent months at a time meditating 8, 10, 12 hours a day. I mean, fasting in complete silence. I mean, like now, I don't know if I could spend 8, 10, 12 minutes in silence, but I did it back then. And then teaching and giving people techniques to wake up their consciousness. And in 1974, I moved to Fairfield, Iowa, Maharishi International University. And some of those people you were having on the cover of your wonderful magazine, Marcy Shimoff, that was where I met her in Fairfield, Iowa. Hopefully, Janet Atwood will be on it soon, but also people like John Gray, Barbara DeAngelis. We were all in Fairfield, Iowa together and committed to raising the consciousness of the planet.
My goodness. Okay. So first of all, one of those names that comes to me when I hear that is like Andy Kaufman. He was part of the TM movement. Are you serious?
Oh, yeah, I loved him. I'm thinking of this one time. I was the assistant director of campus activities, and he used to come all the time and do his show for us. And yeah, we would sit around and talk. Actually, my former husband, one of my former husbands, I've had a few, he says that he was responsible for Andy's fame because Andy was the custodian at the TM Center in Boston in the early 70s. And Fred said he was so bad at it, but he was so funny that Fred said, "You got to go out and be a comedian." And he fired him from his job as custodian at the TM movement. And he went out and he started doing these shows at the local, laugh shop or whatever they were called. So Fred says it was because of him.
I love that. That's awesome. Amazing. Okay, so you make this big shift in life from activism to TM, Transcendental Meditation. My guess is the activism didn't necessarily get left behind. That's still inside of you in some way. But then this move to Iowa, what did your family think about this unfolding in your life? How did they respond?
Oh gosh, should I be really honest with you?
Well, you can be as honest as you want to be.
They were happy. My mother, even though she didn't understand it, she called him the Maharishi. I kept saying, "Mom, it's Maharishi, not the Maharishi." But she, to the day she died, she said, "I will always be thankful to the Maharishi." Because again, it was the 60s. What do we do in the 60s? We did drugs. We took acid. I went lived on communes and she didn't know where I was for months at a time because there were no cell phones. There were no pay phones. I lived in this place called the Kingdom of Heaven and outside of Guadalajara, New Mexico. But then when I started meditation and I decided to become a teacher, she knew I was in a safe place. She knew I wasn't doing drugs anymore. She knew that there was a shift. And then she started meditating and she meditated twice a day until the day she died in her 90s.
My goodness. So after your time there in Iowa, you said you began to travel and teach transcendental meditation as well. What did that look like? Like, take us back to that. Did you travel around the U.S., around the world? What types of organizations or groups?
Well, actually, it was a little bit different. I taught meditation full time from the time I came back from my teacher training in 1972. So I've been a meditation teacher for 53 years.
Wow.
Now you're supposed to say, "Oh, you look good for having been."
I'm amazed by that. Seriously. I am.
Yes. So I've been a meditation teacher for 53 years and I taught for a few years. Then I moved to Fairfield, Iowa.
Okay.
And that was when Maharishi International University was established, which was a fully accredited university. As a matter of fact, we had pre-kindergarten through the PhD level. It still exists in Fairfield. My kids were born there, and it's a beautiful, beautiful community. But what happened was, after being part of this nonprofit for the entire pretty much decade of the 70s, that was when I realized that woman does not live by mantra alone, and I needed some money. I needed like health insurance, car insurance, maybe even a car to insure. So I'm living in my community. I'm really happy, but I thought, okay, how do people make a lot of money fast and where? And the answer came to me, which seemed obvious. They make a lot of money in Los Angeles. And how do they do it? They sell investments. I mean, it looked to me like everybody in LA was wealthy. I mean, I watched the Beverly Hillbillies. So so I left Iowa, set up for LA. I get a job selling investments. I was so not good at it that I literally did not make one sale. Actually, I sold one investment to my father because he felt sorry for me. But now I was not only broke, but at least when I was back in Iowa, I got a stipend in my meals and a roof over my head. Now I'm in LA. I don't have the money to pay the high rent. And I actually remember this one day. I was so despondent because I was so beyond broke that broke would look good. And I was doing something that so was not me, selling
Mm.
investments. But besides that, I was in an unhappy marriage. I had just had a painful miscarriage. I had another major health situation. And I remember going down to the ocean in Santa Monica and sitting on a bench and just weeping. It was a classic dark night of the soul. And I was crying in desperation and asking God why someone who I thought was a really good person was in this horrible situation. And I think probably some of your listeners can relate. Dark night of the soul, no way out, begging God to give me an answer. And after I had a really good cry, felt that, which I recommend, I felt this sense of peace come over me. And I
Mm.
heard the words, and this too shall pass. And
Mm.
literally the next day, I was led by accident to a seminar where I first heard that there was a formula for ending the struggle and creating a prosperous life. It was at the Learning Annex. Remember the Learning Annex in
Yeah,
LA?
yeah, yeah,
Right? The
yeah.
learning. And the leader was talking about the law of attraction. And this was 1979, way before The Secret, way before Esther Hicks made the law of attraction a household concept. And the guy who was giving the presentation, he said, we are like tuning forks. And if a tuning fork is vibrating at an F sharp and a B flat comes towards it, we repel it or it gets repelled. If an F sharp is vibrating and an F sharp comes towards it, it augments that sound. And he said, if we are always saying, I'll never get out of debt, I'll never make a lot of money, I'll never find my soulmate, that's how we're vibrating. Your soulmate wants to come towards you. You are going to repel that by your vibration. Another thing he said, if you really want to be prosperous, he said, become prosperous on the inside and by doing meditation and by doing things that create inner silence, which I was a ace at already. But he said also mentor other people, help other people, make connections. Like, oh, you should meet such and such, like we were doing before we came on the air. You should know so and so. Give people advice, wish people success, even strangers. And he also said that there's plenty of success and prosperity to go around. And if one person becomes successful, it will not take anything away from you. And if you could rejoice in another person's success, even if they're in the same field as you, actually, especially if they're in the same field as you, that is a sure way to magnetize more success, more prosperity, more happiness. I had never heard of these ideas before, but the next morning, true story, I opened up my eyes and I went and I woke up my then husband. Which one was it? No, I hope I've only had two. His name was Mark. I remember. And I said, I know the reason why we upended our lives and we moved to LA. It's because I was supposed to go to that event and I'm supposed to teach these concepts of how to create success and prosperity. And I started studying and reading every book I could and learning from the great masters like Napoleon Hill and Wallace Wattles and Catherine Ponder. And 6 months later, I was ready to roll out my Yes to Success program. And I froze. The self doubt started creeping in. I was only 28 years old. I was a woman, which made a difference back then. I had no business experience except teaching meditation. I had a bachelor's degree from Maharishi International University. I drove a beat up old Chevy Bel Air. I was beyond broke, and I was going to teach people how to be successful. But can I give you the first key to true success?
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Okay, I'll lay it on you, and I know you're going to agree with this. An idea comes to you because it is supposed to be manifested through you.
Mm.
If your ideas, everybody listening, wanted to be manifested by me, your idea would have come to me. You dream the dreams that you're supposed to realize. I dream the dreams that I'm supposed to realize. And ideas come to you at a time when the universe needs that idea. I believe that God, source, spirit, the God of your own understanding, depends on us to listen to those whispers in order to uphold creation. That's why you had the idea to begin this amazing Awaken magazine platform for spreading knowledge to the world through these powerful interviews. I wasn't given that idea. And God can't go out and start a platform like this and start doing interviews.
Mhm.
So you receive that message. And if you didn't do it, the idea would have gone to someone else who was willing to do it because God has no hands but yours.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if your dream is to be a writer or a speaker or a leadership coach, that is an idea that was whispered in your ear because you are supposed to do it. The creator isn't a trickster. You know this, David. The creator won't say to you, here's a dream, but ha ha ha, I'm not going to give you what you need to support it, to fulfill it.
Mhm. Mhm.
No. And I think a lot of people who are listening right now have had a brilliant idea at some time in their lives, didn't act on it. And a year or two or three later, someone else did, and they became famous or a millionaire because that idea needed to be manifest. So, guys, you had first dibs. You didn't act on it. There's an old Arabian proverb that goes, there are three things in life that are irretractable: the spoken word, the released arrow, and the neglected opportunity. So in my case, these principles of success wanted to be taught by me.
Mhm. Say yes to success. Okay, so I want to hear how that name for the business came to be. Like, how did that come into your mind? Was it like just an idea, or did you have a bunch of ideas and you shopped them around?
Oh, that is so funny. I haven't been asked that in ages, and I love that question. I held a contest. I really did. What happened? It was like 1981 by then, and the name of my company again, transparency. It was called Successful Woman Unlimited
Mm,
because I wanted to speak to women because
sure.
I saw that women did not back in 1980 have the opportunities that men had. And I wanted to give women the inspiration to make their dreams come true. And what happened was, and you're going to love this, Marcy Shimoff, who was one of your, I call us cover girls, was one of your cover girls. Marcy was my secretary assistant at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, and I love her, and she is such an amazing woman and such an amazing teacher. So she was my secretary assistant at the time, and one day we looked at each other and we looked out at the audience, and there were just as many men as and women, and we said, I think we should change the name of this business. So we held a contest, and our number two, after Yes to Success, the number two entry was Yellow Brick Road Seminars.
That was
And
an
we
easy
chose
choice.
Yes to
Yeah,
Success.
yeah, yeah. So obviously, we live in a different day and time, but I love to hear about those early germinations of a business. So you have this idea for Yes to Success. I assume you have very little contacts in Los Angeles. How did you actually get started? Your first speaking events and seminars and so forth.
Okay, gosh, you are asking all of my favorite questions. So I'm putting together my program. And the first thing that I did was I used one of the principles that I learned from the great masters that I was studying. And I recommend everybody do this. And that is when you have an idea that fills a need or answers a gap in society, don't go around telling everyone what you're going to do because sacred and secret come from the same root, and your precious ideas are sacred. And when you start telling everybody what you're going to do, one of two things is going to happen. Number one, you're going to get so many accolades. Oh, that's a great idea. You don't do it because you already feel satisfied with everybody telling you how brilliant you are. But more likely, you're going to run up against what I call the discouragement committee. And you know who I'm talking about. Those people who will tell you all the reasons why your idea is not going to work. So keep your ideas safe and warm inside. And I know that probably your listeners are thinking right now, That happened to me. I had this precious idea and it was crushed like a tiny seed. And sometimes it can even be crushed just by innuendo, like, oh, huh, yeah, that's a good idea. And they don't think so. And boom, you just shrink in that idea never to be realized. And, people say, oh, share, and then people will hold you accountable. No one ultimately is going to hold you accountable except yourself. People are too busy going around telling everyone about the book that they're never going to write or the business they're never going to start because they shared the idea too soon and it got crushed by the discouragement committee. Oh, so many people already wrote a book on leadership. Don't let that happen to you. So, what I did is I kept my idea safe and warm inside until I was ready to put up the posters. I rented a room at the Santa Monica Library. And by the way, I'm not telling people not to tell others because someone is going to steal your idea. Don't use that excuse. The truth is, there could be 10,000 people out there doing the same thing as you. Thousands have beautiful magazines. Thousands talk on leadership. Thousands teach you how to find your soulmate. Tens of thousands write vegetarian blogs. But they're not you. There
Mhm.
are people whose contract in this lifetime is with you. And they're waiting patiently to read your magazine. They're waiting patiently to have their life changed by your business, to buy the property from you, whatever it is. So I had my idea. I kept it safe and warm inside. And then one day I couldn't pretend anymore that I wasn't ready. So I took a step from which there was no turning back. And that is, I rented a room at the Santa Monica Public Library, no matter how scared I was. And again, I was barely 30 years old. You know my background, beat up, still driving the beat up old Chevy Bel Air. So I put up the posters, and believe me, the discouragement committee came out and said no one's going to come to a presentation about how your thoughts create your reality. But I know ideas are the starting point of all great achievement, and the road to despair is paved with ideas that are never acted on. I'm big on quotes. Other quote from Theodore Roosevelt: in any moment of decision, the best thing you could do is the right thing. The next best is the wrong thing. The worst thing you could do is nothing.
Mm.
So I went out, put up the posters, and even though the discouragement committee showed up after the posters were up, I walked in to the Santa Monica Public Library and there was standing room only.
Amazing. Amazing. How did things unfold for you over the course of the next few years? Like, where did this grow for you?
Well, over the next few years, but by the way, I have to say, I did have a leg up on most people, and that is because I had been a teacher of TM full time. I had contacts not only all over the US, but all over the world.
Hmm.
So within a few years, my seminars were being taught in most major US cities, and in 12 countries on 4 or 5 continents because I had so many contacts. So I have to say, I did have that advantage. But before I knew it, I had corporate clients. Some of the most renowned transformational leaders today attribute their start from what they learned in my seminar.
Hmm.
And yeah, and by the way, within I think it was about 2 years, I traded in that Chevy Bel Air for a Mercedes. Actually, I didn't trade it in; I gave it away and bought a Mercedes. And so that's it. And by the way, we didn't have the internet. We had phones with curly cords that were connected to the walls.
Hmm.
But one of the things that I learned, and by the way, I actually learned this from my son. That's a whole part of my story. Um, Basically, what I did was I cashed in on my relationship capital. Because,
Hmm.
for example, I gave Marcy her first stage. The first time she ever talked on a stage, it was because I got sick. And I said, honey, if you want to be paid this month, you got to go do it. Like, no. Okay, well, no talking, no payee. And so she did it. And then she got the bug. And of course, now she's one of the most popular speakers in the country and sold a gazillion Chicken Soup for the Woman's Soul books. And her Your Miracles program is one of the most successful of its kind. So,
Hmm.
yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely beautiful. Amazing. At that point, when you're driving around in your Mercedes, you're speaking all over the country, you have this level of success yourself, right? I guess I would want to ask you before well, no, let me ask you this question. How do you integrate that external level of success that you're having versus kind of in a previous season of your life having spiritual enrichment and this depth of the hours and hours and hours of transcendental meditation? How did you integrate that? Or did you say, that was like one season of my life and now this is a new season? Like, how did you process that?
How I process it is that I would never be where I am today if I didn't have that. I don't any longer teach to the Transcendental Meditation Organization, although I love my friends. I love the technique. As my mother would say, it saved Debbie's life. But I now teach through the Art of Living Foundation, which comes from the same
Mm-hmm.
tradition. And I recommend either of those. But the truth is that especially now, I mean, you know this, David, the world is shaken these days. And I love the quote from the hugging saint Amaji, who said, now is the time to cling to our spiritual practices. So when the world shakes, we remain unshakable. And the truth is that the meditation that I have been doing for 55 years, in October will be 55 years, I don't miss. I don't miss. I meditate not just 20 minutes twice a day, but an hour in the morning and a half hour in the evening. And that is my foundation. I don't know how anybody lives without a foundation that really has been scientifically proven to create inner silence, to get rid of anxiety, it's kind of like trying to build a tall skyscraper without a solid, a deep foundation. You can't build a tall skyscraper of your life without a strong foundation of silence. So that's why I recommend a scientifically proven form of meditation, either TM or the meditation that I teach through the Art of Living Foundation, because then when the world shakes, you do remain unshakable. And that's why I was able, and of course, was it smooth sailing for me building an international organization? Of course not. There are always going to be challenges. There are always going to be obstacles, but they didn't shake me. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm a meditator, I won't get shaken. By doing your meditation, you do establish that silence so that when the world shakes, you do remain unshakable.
Mm-hmm. I want to continue hearing about your story and how it unfolds because you've got some major shifts that are happening. But I don't want to miss this moment of we are in a time period where the world is shaking, right? There's just a lot going on in the United States, obviously, that impacts the world. Your suggestion, probably more than suggestion, your doctor's prescription is meditation. If somebody is saying, I've tried that, I don't know what to do, it feels so overwhelming, like what would be your encouragement to just get started? How would you help them?
Well, again, because I'm going to be honest with you, there are a lot of meditations out there that people just, they thought of something like, oh, you know your feet on the floor and this and that. They're all beautiful. Guided meditations, they're all lovely. But I would say that if you can't meditate, then you're not learning a meditation that actually meditates you. That's why I recommend TM and the Art of Living meditation called Sahaj Samadhi, because even if you say, oh, my mind races all the time, I can't sit still, you sit down, you learn this technique, and it meditates you. You don't want to get up after a few moments because you are so relaxed, and it's all been scientifically proven. It's proven to enhance your health. It's proven to enhance your concentration, your happiness, your heart expansion, your brainwave coherence. And that isn't just Debra throwing these things out. That has been proven in the scientific laboratories. So I would say if you are feeling like, I just can't meditate, learn a meditation that is grounded in a 5,000-year-old tradition. The way we teach it the same way as it was taught for thousands of years, and it meditates you.
Amazing. Okay, great. Obviously, we'll uh, link to the art of it's the
Living.
art of living, and so we'll link to that website, and people can get more information. Okay, so talk to me about the shift that happened after this successful business. From what I have heard, you just shut it down, like you gave it up, you moved on. What
I
happened?
did. Okay. Well, it happened on July 5th of 1988. I know the date because and I was about to have my own daytime TV talk show. My Yes to Success book was in the hands of a renowned agent who was in negotiations with a couple different publishers in New York. And on July 5th, 1988, I gave birth to my first child. And the moment the midwife handed me my baby daughter and I looked into her eyes and I touched her little fingers, I knew that if I was going to be true to my own teaching, the cornerstone of which is always to listen to your inner voice and follow your heart, I knew that my career would have to come to a screeching halt. I mean, if I didn't walk my talk, how could I expect anyone else to trust my words? I believe that people have built in authenticity meters, and my meter reading would have been way over in the negativity and the negative territory if I kept traveling around the world when my heart was home with my daughter and 3 years later, my son. I mean, I didn't want to leave her to go to the bathroom. I remember I was supposed to do a tour of Southeast Asia. And when my daughter was born, my friend Chiang says, okay, let's get the tour on the books. And I said, Chiang, you're going to have to call me back in 18 years. He's still my friend. He teases me about that. No one was happy with me. I had a line of people that had been waiting for me to push that baby out and get back to work. The agent, the publisher, the producer, Janet Atwood, founder of the Passion Test. She was then my secretary, and she took notes while I was meeting with the producer. And they were all like, have you gone out of your mind? And the answer was, yeah. It's precisely what had happened. I had gone completely out of my mind, right into my heart. And I'm telling you, everyone, if you could just move, because your mind is filled with all of these lies that were told you about you not being smart enough, not being the right color, not being the right gender, not being the right sexual orientation, not being the right religion. It's all lies. If you have a dream in your heart, that dream is there because you are supposed to manifest that dream. But if you're going through your mind, there are all of these screens that you have to filter your desires through. But if you move into your heart, and my favorite question is, what would love do? And love would not lead you astray. Love would give you the courage to follow your heart to the path that the God of your understanding whispered in your ear. So don't mind those things that are in your head. Follow your heart. And, people were telling me you're giving up a career, but what I knew was that we are all put on earth for a reason. And that reason is not going to go away if you take a few years out to be with your mother while she's making her transition, or a few years out to work on a political campaign, or in my case, 2 decades out to be a mom at home.
Amazing. Amazing. In that process, like, you made the decision, but did you ever kind of go, gosh, I don't know if I made the right decision. Should I go back, or were you just clear on it from July 5th on?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Truth. People always say, Dad, like you're saying, did you ever doubt? And the answer is absolutely yeah. In fact, I remember this one day, and I was home with my 2 kids while many of my students were off at their book launch parties, with the little brie, with the, hot brie with the walnuts and the honey on top of it. And I had just gotten back from Chuck E. Cheese. And I remember this one day that my kids were really out of sorts, and usually I didn't put them in front of the TV, but it was a TV day. I know nobody listening ever had it to hear with your kids, but I did. My kids were like 2 and 5. I remember because Daniel was still in diapers, and they wanted to watch Barney, that big purple dinosaur thing. I said, okay, I'll find Barney. Turn on the TV. True story. I'm doing a channel check for Barney. What do I see? One of my students on Oprah with a New York Times bestselling book, doing a demonstration for Oprah that he had learned in my seminar about the power of your mind to move matter. And Oprah is like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. So I'm standing in front of the TV. I burst into tears because at that moment, I felt like I had ruined my life. Like he gets Oprah, I get them. So I am standing in front of the TV weeping because it was like just one of those days, right? So I'm weeping. And the only thing that kind of shook me out of my self-imposed pity party was when my daughter says to me, Mommy, and I said, yes, sweetheart. She goes, I think you forgot our popsicles. And I just have to tell you the rest of the story because it's pretty
Yeah,
profound.
yeah.
I said, oh, okay. So I find Barney. I go into the kitchen and I am mad at God. Have you ever had one of those moments where you're really mad at God? Like, really?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I wanted to trust, but I was mad. So I am pouring the orange juice into the popsicle molds. And I'm saying, why did you do this to me? That was supposed to be me on Oprah, and he gets Oprah, and I get them. And I heard this voice. And when I say heard the voice of God, it's not like Charlton Heston, like Deborah. No, but I heard just little voice, remember the book. I'm like, I do remember the book. It was hands of the publisher. God is like, no, not that book. And I saw this book about somebody who had died, was revived, came back, and wrote a book. And in the book, he said that he had died. He had gone through this long tunnel of darkness. And at the end of the tunnel of darkness, there is a being of light who showed him the highlights of all of his whole life. And it was a very short kind of movie reel. It showed him showing his son how to swing a baseball bat, dancing with his daughter at her wedding. And he's like, well, what about when I brought my company public? And what about when I opened the factories in Japan? And the being of light said, all of those moments glorified you. And then the being of light showed him the life of somebody else who had just passed away. And in the book, it said these curtains of golden light parted. And it was the woman who used to take a couple buses to come to his house and clean his toilets. And the being of light said that she had permission to show the man the highlights of this woman's life. And it showed her carrying a pot of soup to a sick friend. It showed her stroking her mother's hair as her mother's making her transition. It showed her cheering at the baseball games for the kids whose parents couldn't be there because they had also had to work 2 or 3 jobs just to put food on the table. It showed her, going to church and hugging everybody up and saying, how you doing today? And then the being of light said to the man, you judged her as such a poor, pathetic creature, but she had a glorious life. And when you get here, you realize that the only thing that matters while you're on earth is how much love you give. So I just put the popsicles in the freezer. I went back. I sat between my 2 babies and watched me some Barney and just surrendered. I just put away Napoleon Hill and Clement Stone and Wallace Wattles and surrendered to learning from my 2 greatest teachers, who, of course, are the 2 teachers who call me mom.
Amazing, amazing. At what point did you feel this calling reemerging to step back into speaking and teaching and coaching? How did that unfold for you?
It was another very specific moment, although I don't know the date. And, again, each of us was put on earth for a God-given purpose. And if you follow your heart, even if it appears to take you on a detour for 20 years, it's not going to go away. So one day I get a call from my friend, Janet Atwood, and never a woman to mince words. You have to have her on one of your covers. She is a superstar. She calls me and she says to me, okay, Debbie, don't you think it's time you start speaking again and stop pretending that your kids need you? And of course, she was right. They were like, they were like saying to me the same thing. Mom, we're 21 and 18. We don't need you to read us Harry Potter anymore. Right? And And yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure if they ever really needed me, but I was kind of the one who needed them because to me, one, I love you so much, mommy. You're the best mommy in the world was worth more than 1,000 standing ovations.
Hmm.
But it was time to get back to my Dharma. And then remember what I said early on when you cheer somebody on who's in your same field, that's when the grace and the glory is going to come back to you 1,000-fold. So, what does Janet do? She gets me on a stage just like that. And she and I speak about something very similar. And I remember saying to her, Janet, we speak about something similar, and you're getting me this stage, and it was huge. It was in Canada, and with Greg Hapstrit, and I said, "What if they like me better than they like you?" And she said, "Then somebody else will like me better than they like you." And then shortly after that, Marcy calls me up and has this idea to start this company called Your Year of Miracles and invites me to be her partner. And for the first 5 glorious years, Marcy and I taught Your Year of Miracles together. And again, one of the things that is so key to being successful is helping other people, because you don't do it because my son taught me the saying building relationship capital.
Hmm.
And I wish I could tell you that story, but I'm not sure we have time for it. But people don't forget when you do something for them, they in most cases want to do something for you. So here are these two women who I helped decades before. And Marcy also handed me a best-selling book to write, Chicken Soup for the American Idol Soul, combining the #1 TV reality series and the #1 book series. She hands it to me because she was too busy to do it at the time. She was working on her book, Happy for No Reason. So they wanted someone to write that. She says, Deb, want to write a best-selling book? Relationship capital.
Mm. In this day with social media where comparison, it seems to be magnified even more, and the sense that there are only a certain number of followers, and I've got to make sure that I get my own. You have just told us some really inspiring stories about living out that principle of generosity. But what would you say to those individuals who are listening that are in their 20s, 30s, 40s and feeling the pressure of that? I got to protect, I've got to protect my stuff. I can't refer and encourage other people. I got to build my name.
Well, what I would say is number one, if you find yourself going on social media and seeing somebody has 1 million likes and you have 20 likes, stop doing that to yourself. I mean, what I do personally when I see somebody getting a book deal or I get contracted for a second, the first thing I do is I rejoice in their success. I wish them continued even greater success and prosperity. I send them love from my heart to theirs. And so that's what I do. But if you find that it really, really contracts you, just don't look at it. Okay. Just do your own path. Comparison can be death. And just know that you were put on earth. As I said, there could be 10,000 people who talk on leadership, but nobody is you. And there are people who came into this lifetime because you're supposed to be their teacher, not the person with 100,000 likes or whatever it is. Just know that there are people waiting for you. And don't wait for everything to be perfectly in place, because never is there going to be a time that everything is perfectly in place. We live in a universe where there are always going to be loose ends and all. Just take a step from which there is no turning back. Like I put up my posters and rented the room at the Santa Monica Public Library at the age of 28 that I was going to teach people how to be successful. But that idea was whispered into my ear. Do I have time to tell you one story about my
Do it.
son?
Yeah, of course. Let's hear it.
You
Yeah.
really? Okay, good. Because, you know, Daniel, my little guy, always loved basketball. When he was 5 and all of the kids wanted to have their parties at the aforementioned Chuck E. Cheese, Daniel insisted on having his 5th birthday at Michael Jordan's restaurant so he could sit next to the Holy Grail of Michael Jordan's shoe. And when he was 14, he made the A team. But you know the expression, white boys can't jump. They kind of can't. And he was the only white kid on the A team at Evanston High School that year. But he traveled all over the city of Chicago, warming the bench, but he realized that he had an eye for talent, and he started making videos and sending them out to college coaches all over the country. And, you know, Chicago is so rich with talent. And by the time he was 16, he was known as the go-to scout. He was featured on ESPN, ABC, Comcast, full-page article about him in Sports Illustrated. But the reason why I tell you that is that he still felt that he was moving too slowly, sending out one video. And he had this, there's a problem. He was getting these kids scholarship, but he wasn't making any money. So first of all, he came to me and he said, Mom, I have this idea. Instead of making films, why don't I put on a showcase? We were never the discouragement committee for our kids. Ever, ever, ever. If God gave them an idea, who am I to say that'll never work? Right? We said, great idea. So he decides, because these kids, Nike put on showcases, Reebok put on showcases. It was $250 to be in a showcase. Most of the kids in the hood didn't have $2.50 to take a bus. So Daniel starts a nonprofit at the age of 16, starts putting on free showcases, raises a bunch of money to put on these free showcases. His first one was like 10 coaches and 50 kids. And as time went on, they grew and they grew and they grew. And his last showcase was like 200 coaches and 400 kids. And to date, he has raised close to $100 million in college scholarships for the kids on the south and west sides of Chicago. And I'm so proud of him. But why I want to tell you this is, when he's getting all of these scholarships for the kids and he's sleeping on my couch, I'm paying for the car that he uses. I'm paying for the cameras that he's using. And I'm like, Daniel, isn't there some way you could make money? And he said, and I quote, Mom, don't worry. Actually, he said, Mom, chill, but he was so respectful. Mom, don't worry. I'm building relationship capital. And then he started putting on these showcases. And even though he still didn't take a penny for himself, people saw what he was doing. And then one day he decided he wanted to make a movie about basketball in Chicago. And he, one of the people who he had built relationship capital with, who saw what he was doing, not taking a penny for himself, gave him $500,000 to make a movie. And it was nominated for an Emmy. And now everybody wants a piece of Team Daniel. I could just give you a little bit of an idea. I don't know if you know who Anthony Davis is.
Yeah.
If you look, Google kid who discovered Anthony Davis, you'll see Daniel Poneman. And he was also just named one of the 100 most influential people in the world of basketball. Slam dunk, remember Mac McClung? He was Mac McClung's agent for years and years, the guy who jumped over the Kia, remember? And now he is, and by the way, when he made his movie, Dwayne Wade and Chance the Rapper were the executive producers. And when nobody knew Chance the Rapper in Chicago, Daniel would go around and get people to go to his concerts. Not because he thought, I'm going to get people to go to Chance's concerts and later on he'll executive produce my movie. He didn't even know what an executive producer was. But he built relationship capital. So here's the point. At 15, he knew the law of abundance. He didn't support these kids because he thought one day they'll be in the NBA and they'll get me good seats at the playoffs. As a matter of fact, he focused on Division II kids who will never go to the NBA. Anthony was an anomaly. But he grew up with privilege. And to him, that meant he needed to give back. Even though I never said that to him, he said, isn't that what people do when they grow up with privilege?
Hmm.
And, but anyway, the
Man, we
sun
gotta.
doesn't say, give me light and only if, you know, it's like you give because that's what beings do. And you just build relationship capital and it always comes back.
Amazing. We get an amazing story, amazing principal, and a super proud mom all at the same time. It's just like awesome. So good. A gushing mom with incredible stories of her son. So thank you for sharing that. Hey, I know that you have multiple programs that help people. Obviously, you're a public speaker. You're available to corporations and organizations. You have the Awake method that people can experience throughout the year. You also have something called Ageless. And I mean, you got a few years under your belt. Are you slowing down anytime soon? Like, are you going to, what's going on here?
No, I just founded Ageless a couple years ago, and it's anti-aging for your brain, your body, and your future because I saw people who were my same age, aches and pains and forgetful. And I realized that I know how to remain ageless. I know. And so I teamed up with a friend of mine who happens to be a Harvard trained mind body researcher. I don't know if you remember in the 1990s, there was a cover of Newsweek, Have We Discovered the Fountain of Youth? That was her team's research at Harvard.
Hmm.
So she and I teamed up just a couple years ago and we started teaching our ageless course because people think, oh, well, my father had Alzheimer's or my mother had arthritis. There are lifestyle changes you can make that will. Do you know that only 5% of people with Alzheimer's have a relative that have Alzheimer's? The other 95%, it's lifestyle decisions that you can choose. Eat this or eat that. Sleep this way, sleep that way. Exercise this way, exercise that way. And we knew what to do. And we know what to do, how to slow, stop, and reverse aging. And I am so not close to slowing down. I'm 73. And I just recently started yet another company, which I'm not going to tell you what it is, because what is sacred must be kept secret. But yeah, learn our anti-aging secrets, and then you won't slow down either.
What's the base place for people to learn about the Ageless program?
Everything is at yes2success.com. And thank you for asking. Everything is there. My ageless, my awake, my yes to success. I even teach a communications course on how to be effective on Zoom and how to be effective from the stage. So I teach a lot of things, and it's all there at yes2success.com.
Is there one or two social media platforms that you really enjoy the most,
Well,
or what would you suggest?
Well, I'm not going to say right now because we're revamping my social media presence, except for I have a YouTube channel and I do something called Success Saturday. Every Saturday, it's a 5 to 10. Sometimes I go 15 minutes, depending on what's happening in the world. Sometimes I have to, but I teach tips for health, but mostly tips for living a life that you love and becoming awake. Because you know what? That's why Awakened, it is time to get the tools so that we can wake up. And there are tools, there are ways, like your wonderful guests share, to become more awake. And now is the time to do it. And because the more awake we are and the more bright our light is, because people are like, how do I contribute to the world? What can I do to contribute to the world? Wake up, become a bright light, and your light is going to radiate and it is going to counteract the darkness.
Oh, so beautiful, Deborah. Thank you so much. I just appreciate your energy, your passion, your powerful stories, just all of the one of the things that I tell people that I work with and that I coach all the time is, they're nervous about speaking or being on podcast or whatever. And I said, you know what? The shift is from performing to service. Because the moment you're worried about performing, it's anxiety, it's all about you, it's insecurity. Service, it's all about the other people. And who cares? You're not trying to impress them. You're here to serve them, right? With your wisdom, your knowledge, your experiences, your inspiration. And you have served us today. You have served us. You have poured out your life and principles to us. So I thank you. I thank you for that, and encourage you, as you're listening, you can swipe up on your phone and click the links, yes-to-success.com. You can find the other links to Debra's social media there as well. So we'll link to all of those. So thank you so much, Debra, for being with us today.
Wow. Thank you so much. And for the work you're doing and for bringing so much light into a world that needs the light. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Awaken Magazine podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and our other conversations, would you mind taking a moment to leave a 5-star review and maybe even a comment on Spotify or Apple Podcasts? That's one of the ways that you can give back to the show and help us reach more people. And of course, feel free to share the episode with a friend. And if you're not already on our email list, we send out an inspiring email every Monday morning full of articles and interviews. Just head on over to awakenedmagazine.com and click subscribe and join for free. Our hope is that all the resources we share will help our world continue awakening to love.